Hey, real quick before we get started with this review, I just want to share a quick story with you. You know, as more and more people start to watch my channel, more companies have reached out to me and communicated with me and are actually asking for reviews. And for the longest time, I only bought the products that I really wanted to review, but it was kind of a bummer because if you guys wanted to see a review for a product that I didn't want to buy, it probably wasn't going to happen, or I had to shell out a bunch of money to do a review that I really did for a product I didn't even want. But as more people have started to watch, more companies have communicated with me. And I ended up talking to Team Losi, and I reached out to them and said, hey, are you guys interested in having me do a review? Now, this is clearly, they've seen the reviews like the B44 review and other products. And they said, yeah. And I said, just so we're clear, the review, it doesn't change. If you give me the product or I buy the product, the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter how I acquire the product. And they were like, yeah, no, we get it. That's totally cool. They're like, you know what? We'd be happy to have you do a review, and you know, we believe that you're more than fair in all your videos. And so this video is this is one of the very few kits that have been given to me. I just want you guys all to know that whether I buy the kit or the kit's given to me, the truth is the truth, and you're gonna get my honest opinion. I just want you to know that, a little bit of transparency, and that's that. So let's do this review. Hey everybody, Jason here. Today I'm gonna do a review on the TLR 22.4. This is the actual buggy that Ryan Mayfield just used alongside with his 22 2.0 to win the 2015 Reedy race, which was the first Reedy race Ryan's ever won. So congratulations, Ryan, if you end up watching this video. So this buggy is really kind of interesting. I call it the silent assassin because you really can't hear it. When you're yanking on the throttle and this buggy is freshly built, you can actually hear the tires scrubbing the dirt a lot more than you can actually hear the drivetrain. But let's go ahead, unbox this buggy, and then we'll get on with the review, and I'll share my opinion on how it handles and how much value is and all that stuff. So here we go.
All right, so I just got my TLR 22.4 in the mail. Let's break out the bat knife and get this sucker open. I mean, that's how you unbox a kit, with a double-bladed bat knife. So we'll just go ahead and do this the easy way, I guess. Let's see what we got here. Looks like it's got a seal, which is okay because we have a double-bladed bat knife. Gets rid of seals like a boss. I think I just cut into the box a little bit. There we go. All good. All right, let's open this baby up and see what you get. All right, I guess the first thing I'm noticing is that the body is pre-trimmed. Winning! That's kind of nice. I'm not a real big fan of cutting out bodies, so if they're going to cut it out for me, I'll take that all day long. Of course, it comes with the traditional Team Losi racing wing. I love these wings. They're extra rigid, and I use these on a bunch of my different cars. And this thing actually looks packaged very similarly, not surprising, to the 22 2.0 buggy, the two-wheel drive buggy I just built. So I guess let's drag this thing out of the box and see what we've got. So we'll just start with bag E. Kind of like my high school grades. Anyways, it looks like there's some aluminum parts in here, which is pretty cool. Man, there's all kinds of... This car is actually... Team Losi really does a pretty good job of unpackaging their stuff. This is the D bag, you can see. Got the arms and some other pieces, CVAs or drive shafts and stuff like that in there. Turnbuckles. This is bag C, which looks like, I don't know if you can see this real clearly on film, but it actually has these injection molded plastic parts that have the aluminum inserts molded right into them, and that is really nice. And there's no question that on some of the higher end kits, when you see that stuff, it really improves durability. So bag H here, clearly you have, and again, it comes with white and yellow wheels, which I think is really cool. It's really cool that TLR sends both wheel options with the kit. You know, they really don't have to do that, but I like the fact that they do. And you can see here that this is clearly looks like the battery strap, body clips, and there was the long turnbuckle here for the steering is in here. So bag F, that's the shocks, and looks like it's got the shocks. Comes with 32.5 weight shock oil. Bag B, this looks like the center belt cover. And I can't really see what else is in here. I can't tell if that's looks like there's some out drives, bearings, things like that. This must be the main drivetrain bag, bag A. Sure looks that way. I see it's got the TLR Loctite, the wrench, and the four-way wrench. Of course, all your belts, Looks like the motor mount, stuff like that. So here is the chassis, and I'm pretty sure this is a hard anodized 7075 plate that's been machined, and very, very similar to the 22 2.0 in like texture and feel. Of course, it's for the four-wheel buggy, but very nice. And then graphics. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody use this gargantuan TLR sticker, but maybe I'll just like stick this thing across the top of the buggy or something for fun, just because I've never seen anybody use one. So, all right, that's that. That's what you get when you buy a TLR 22.4 four-wheel drive buggy.
Okay, so now you can see what you get when you buy the TLR 22.4. Of course, you can see here, this is not the stock body. This is a J-Concept silencer body. And when you compare all the bodies that are out today, this is by far my favorite body. I kind of wish JC made a finisher body, because those tend to be my favorite style of bodies. But either way, this silencer looks pretty good. And you can see I ended up rocking the 22.4 stickers on here. So let me get the body off, show you guys around this buggy, and then we'll get on with it. So it's just Velcroed on. I'm not a big fan of body clips. So you can see here's my actual kit. And I want to say thanks to my buddy John Rea. His name has actually already worn off right here on this shrink wrap, but John actually wired this thing up for me, and I appreciate that very much, John. Obviously, you can see that there's a shorty in the kit, but we'll talk more about that later. Basically, what you have is two belts. You have one belt, one long belt that runs from the rear to the slipper unit, and then one belt that goes out to the front diff. Of course, very similar, if not the identical same shocks that come on the Losi 22 2.0. And really, that's just about it. It has this long link, and you can change your Ackerman and stuff like that on the steering rack, but that's basically the layout of the buggy. This buggy actually comes designed, basically, it was engineered to use saddles in the back, but guys have just retrofitted this one side over here to put the shorty in and then just move the electronics to the other side, which ironically makes a pretty big difference in the way this car, you know, drives, handles, lands, things like that. So anyway, so that's the layout. You can see that I'm running a sway bar. Some things that you may or may not notice are that I'm actually running CVAs instead of the normal universals, which are still here in the front. I don't know how well the camera will pick that up, but all right, let's get on with the review. Okay, the build. The build in this buggy actually went a lot. When I pieced through the instructions and I saw like the center slipper unit and the clicker and the belts and stuff, I kind of expected the build to be a little bit more complicated. Now it's still a little bit elaborate, and there's a couple spots in the manual where you have to use like these little C-clips to put all the gears on the on the drive shaft or whatever. And unfortunately, I bent one of those dang things with my pliers, but I was able to flatten it back out and put it back on there. So overall, I'd say the build actually went too bad. It really wasn't any more complicated to build than some of the other buggies that are out there. Although it would be nice if TLR would do things like put a few extra C-clips in there, because some of those really small parts that are hard to find, or you know, you'd have to drive all the way to the hobby shop for one C-clip if you happen to bend one and couldn't fix it, or if you lost one, that would be a bummer. But overall, I'd say the build actually went pretty good. So I really can't complain. The plastics are nice, the kit quality was nice, the instructions were pretty good. So I would give the build a thumbs up. I didn't think it was too bad at all. Okay, handling, jumping. You know, this car jumps and lands really well, specifically with the shorty. And I'm sure, of course, a lot of that's due to the fact that the car has a shorty and it has less weight in it than probably it was originally intended for. But I'm not exactly sure. There's something else going on. And you know, if you look at one of my gripes about the car is the fact that the TLR shocks have a very small thread on the end of a thicker shock shaft. So basically, they're using a traditional 3mm thread on a shock shaft that's 3.5mm. And you know, a buddy of mine, Chris, from back in Illinois, said to me, he's like, you know, maybe that thicker shock shaft, you know, when it enters the shock body, it's displacing more fluid. So maybe it's creating more pack, maybe it's creating more dampening. And I think Chris is probably onto something. Now, I don't know if the guys over at TLR intended for that to be an effect. I don't know if they were like brainstorming and said, hey, if we put a thicker shock shaft, we can get more pack and more dampening. I don't know that that happened. If I had to guess, it's probably because they wanted less deflection of the shock, you know, in the cartridge and stuff like that, you know, at full extension. But either way, it seems to have, you know, benefits in both directions. So I wish they would just go ahead and make the threads larger to match the shock shaft, because I think that can be a weak spot. Now, I haven't broken any shock shafts or broken the ends of any shock shafts, but I do know a couple guys that have in the past, you know, after running the car for quite a while. So anyways, the car jumps and lands really well. But one thing that you'll notice when you're actually jumping the car is that it really responds aggressively to throttle and brake inputs in the air. But when you turn the wheels, the car really doesn't tend to roll a whole lot compared to buggies like the B44 or the Hot Bodies D413, or really any of the cars that have a central drive shaft, you know, rotating down the center of the buggy. Now, of course, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that with the motor mounted transversely and your, you know, a slipper shaft and of course your discs and everything spinning, that this car just doesn't, it just has more inertia going this way than it does going this way. So it's, I wouldn't really call it a good or a bad thing. If you're a super skilled driver like Ryan Mayfield and some of these guys, clearly it may limit your ability a little bit to get the car whipped and pointed into a corner in the air. But it didn't hurt Ryan Mayfield at the 2015 Reedy race, so I don't think most of us club racers should really be worrying about it. But it was something that I noticed. So anyways, that's about all I have to say about jumping and landing. I think the car jumps good. It definitely lands good. You know, probably halfway due to the shock, you know, of course the shock package, the geometry droop, how much weight you have in the car. When you have a little bit less with the shorty, it's definitely going to help. But overall, I think the car definitely jumps and lands pretty darn good. Let's get on to cornering. You know, when I first put this car together, for the first time ever, I ran it at OCRC, and it seemed a little loose, and it was a little pushy, and as the tires came in, it got better. But one of the things I ended up doing was putting these CVAs in the actual back of the car, and I was really surprised to find that just doing nothing but adding CVAs actually locked the back of the car down quite a bit. Now, in general, the universals that are actually in the front of the car, they're probably better on a really bumpy surface, but if you're on a smooth high bite surface and you're looking to generate a little bit more traction, from what I understand, the CVAs generate a little bit more bind in the actual drive system. I don't want to get into the elaborate mechanics of how the car works or how I've been told the car works, but the bottom line is this. I put the CVAs in the back and it definitely generated more. The car didn't want to waggle so much. It was definitely a little bit more hooked up in the corner and didn't waggle as much coming out of the corner. So in general, all of these next generation platforms can really be made to do whatever you want them to do. It just takes time to learn yourself, learn the car, and make the adjustments necessary to get the car to do what you want it to do. So overall, I would say this car corners well. And with the addition of the clicker, which I haven't been using, I've been running the car in full-time four-wheel drive, there's no question that that adds another element of drivability. So if you really wanted to drive this car like a two-wheel, you know, send it into the corner, turn the wheel, hit the brake to pivot the car, if you implement the clicker, you definitely can do that, which is a unique option, and you really can't do that with any of the other platforms that are on the market right now. So good stuff. I mean, cornering, good stuff. Okay, acceleration and braking. I've already said it before, but this car is like the silent assassin. With those belt drives, I'm running a 6.5, and when you yank the throttle, you literally can hear the car scrubbing, the tires scrubbing the dirt more than you can actually hear the drivetrain, and I happen to really like that. I think that's very cool. Now the rear belt can actually be tensioned by changing the inserts that will actually pull the diff back a little bit. But right now, there really isn't a way to tension the front belt, which I think is a little bit of a shortcoming in the car. Because I run far less brake than a lot of people, especially the pros. A lot of those guys run 80, 70, 80, 85% brake. I would say on average, my cars run 50% or less, all of them, because I just don't find that I need that much. And now, after at least 20 batteries or so, maybe a few more, the car definitely, when you hit the brake to like slow the car down at the end of a straightaway before you let it round the corner, I'm definitely hearing some slipping of that front belt. So I definitely think that hopefully TLR is watching. Hopefully you guys are willing to maybe try and find a way. I'm not an engineer. I don't know exactly what the best way to do it would be, but maybe you could make inserts for the front diff, something so that you could add a little bit more tension. Because while the rear belt is clearly, you can adjust the tension of the front belt, you're kind of like SOL at the moment. So it's not a huge deal, and I've never heard it slip on power, but definitely on heavy braking, on, I would say medium to high traction, I'm definitely getting some belt slippage. Doesn't seem to affect the performance of how the car brakes, but just hearing it is kind of like, it's like, that sucks, that kind of thing. So anyways, acceleration, good and silent. Braking, good, but not as silent. And that's that. Okay, durability. Overall, I think the car has been pretty durable, and it's taken some pretty gnarly crashes, but I have broken 3 things. I broke one front arm. Now, My kit, as I've probably already mentioned, is a first generation kit, which had hinge pins that had the little ring on them, which have been updated to have hinge pins with no ring, and it had the original front arms. And now TLR has done running changes and they've updated the front arms on this kit to make them a little bit more durable. With that said, I broke 3 things. I broke a ball stud, which really, I don't really think it was the car's fault. I was jumping it, it came down really gnarly, you know, on the rear wheel, and it ended up breaking off a ball stud, which is actually still in there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but which is why there's a really long link on the car. I know, I'll buy some hubs when I get some time. But anyways, so I broke a ball stud. Literally like 10 laps later, I did the exact same thing because I grabbed the throttle and the car kind of came off sideways. It landed. And this ball stud didn't break, but it broke the end out of the ball cup, which is really no big deal. And then last but not least, there was a pretty gnarly like double triple at OCRC where you had to turn the corner, jump this double cleanly and downside it, and then it was about an 80% pull to make the triple, even with my 6.5. Well, I overjumped this first double and I kind of flat bottomed it, and so I just yanked it, and the car spun the tires all the way up the face of the triple, and it just kind of came off cockeyed. And when it came down just like this, and it just snapped the front arm off. And I'm pretty confident that pretty much any car, with the exception of maybe the hot bodies, would have just sawed off the front arm. So I really, honestly, it was one of those crashes where the car broke. I really wasn't upset. I didn't think it was, I never thought to myself, oh, that's fragile, that's BS. Honestly, I thought, you're an idiot. You probably should have checked up, but instead you grabbed the throttle and now you're back in the pits fixing an arm. So in general, I think the car is pretty good. There are definitely people out there that feel like the car is fragile. And I think that if you're racing on a really big, really fast track with really big jumps, I think that it's very possible that you could break the car maybe more than you would expect. And so if you're on a really big, really fast track with really big jumps, it's just going to be important to land the car cleanly. But with that said, at the 2015 Reedy race, which, you know, OCRC has some fast layouts with some big jumps. You know, a lot of their landings have kind of a narrow margin of error. You know, there's a lot of top pros that run there, and there's a fine line between making the track too, you know, so complicated that, you know, newbies can't run on it, and so tame that pros aren't really challenged. So there's, you know, that's a balance there. And I will tell you this, I watched other brands of buggies literally break front arms off. This is not an exaggeration. I would say 15 times. I watched 15 buggies saw front arms and a couple of corners and landing this triple. And I think I saw one TLR buggy break a front arm the whole time I was there. So I wouldn't call the car fragile by any means, but it's also not a battle tank. So I would call the durability good, not great. Okay, when it comes to the aftermarket for this car, there's already a ton of people that are making stuff. TLR obviously makes CVAs and aluminum hexes and new toe blocks, and there's all kinds of, you know, setup information for the car. Exotech's making parts. RC Shocks, Marcus over at RC Shocks has actually got a center diff for the car, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Casper, if you've never been over to Casper RC, he makes some really nice diff lubes and things like that, and he actually makes thrust bearings that are actually captured so that you don't actually have to like chase the balls around if you drop one, which are pretty nice little items. Of course, J Concepts makes stuff, and I got these from Jason Rono when I was down at the Reedy race. These are the actual really nice finned turnbuckles, and you know, the turnbuckles in this car are pretty prominent, especially when the body's off, the really long one that controls the steering, so I'm pretty stoked to have these. So there's clearly a lot of people out there that are making parts for this car, which is, even if you don't need them to go fast, it's cool that the option is there. So there's no question that the aftermarket for this car is pretty solid. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my personal kit. I talked to some of the guys over there at TLR, and they're pretty much convinced that my kit was one of the original kits that was designated for marketing. Basically what they were telling me is, hey, look, we're pretty sure you got an absolute first generation kit. And with that being said, the first generation kits had front hinge pins that had like little rings in them where the set screw would actually kind of fit into the divot so that the hinge pin couldn't come out. But the downside was those hinge pins tended to break after some time. So those have been updated, basically more like a screw. Basically it's a hinge pin that goes all the way through that has a little nut that holds everything on. And those have not been breaking. And then of course I had the first generation front arms, and apparently they've done some updating and added some material to the front arms to make them a little bit more durable. At the end of the day, the kit has actually been pretty good. But something that kind of makes me laugh is, you know, when I first contacted TLR when we were communicating through email and stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, we're good for a review. You know, that's cool." I was like, I just thought to myself, these guys either have balls of steel or they truly believe in their product, and I can respect either, whichever one it is. I respect them both, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I just thought I'd throw that in there. So, anyways, let me get on to my likes and dislikes. You know, my gripes. I really like the fact that TLR has a lot of support. I like the fact that they added the clicker in. In general, I like the way the car drives. I do. The arms are very rigid. The material for like the arms and stuff, that's a double-edged sword for me. I like the fact that it's rigid, but it clearly, you know, the harder and stiffer you make a material, the more brittle it becomes. And so I don't know that there's any way to create insane, like, fearless durability in one of these cars where you could just drive them with absolutely no fear without mixing materials, kind of like what they've done in the Hot Bodies car. But with that said, when I drive this car, I don't in any way feel that it's fragile. But here are some things that I think definitely could use some work. First and foremost, you really can't tension that front belt, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. And while that's really not a problem when you're on power accelerating the car, mainly because the weight is shifted over the rear end, when you do some heavy braking, I just said doo-doo in a video, that's pretty funny. When you do some heavy braking, entering like a straightaway or something like that, you're definitely gonna get some belt slippage, and it's, I don't know that it hurts a lot, but I'm sure that over a long period of time or over, you know, say 20 or 30 batteries, if you're doing some heavy braking, it's gonna start to wear on the belt and wear on the pulleys. And so if you could retension the front belt, that would be pretty awesome. My second gripe would be the shock shafts. They're a little bit larger diameter, and so because they're not like a standard, like a Kyosho or an Associated or something like that, you really can't use those O-rings. You have to use the special TLR O-rings. Now, or X-rings, I guess I should say. Now, they work really well. The X-rings work really well, but if you're traveling or if you're at a hobby shop and you run out of those X-rings, you're kind of in a bind. And I guess the other thing about the shock shaft is, why are the threads only 3mm? I mean, it seems like that's a weak spot for me. Now, not that I've broken a shock shaft, but I have heard of a few people that have. So I would say if you were going to update the kit, either shrink the shock shaft so that all O-rings fit, which I probably wouldn't do, but what I would do is I'd make the threads a little bit bigger and then make the eyelets fit thread onto a 3.5mm shock shaft. That's, you know, that's what I would do. Now, you guys TLR really dodged a bullet with this car because Serpent just released their car, which is a belt-driven car designed for saddles, no center diff, similar to this car, but it doesn't look like you're gonna be able to get a shorty in it. Now, this car is nice because you can get a shorty in it, but I think it would be a lot better if TLR set this car up and basically designed it so that a shorty would fit a little bit easier. Pretty much all you really have to do is trim off or Dremel a little bit of the side guard and then maybe Dremel a little piece of the chassis where it kind of flares up a little bit. But it would really be nice if TLR could flatten out that spot on the chassis and do the side guard on their own. That way you can run the car either way. Those first three things really aren't a super big deal. The belt thing I think it would be nice to get that thing a little bit tighter just so that it doesn't skip, you know, under heavy braking. Now, the last thing I'm kind of torn about. When this car was under development alongside the Hot Bodies car, obviously TLR, I don't think anybody could have truly predicted how prevalent, how common, and how much of a perceived need gear diffs would become here in the RC community today. So when this car was originally developed, the idea really was to preserve, you know, the driving characteristics and basically the geometry from the Double X, which was super successful. And I think they did a really good job doing that. But there are two things this car doesn't have that I think would be, I don't want to say they're absolutely necessary, but that doesn't have gear diffs and it doesn't have a center diff. Now, there are guys out there like Marcus Williams from rcshocks.com, rcshox.com, that have created like a center diff for this car. But at the end of the day, you're stuck with ball diffs and no gear diff option. Now, for the vast majority of us here in the US, I mean, even if you're at OCRC, Rainmans, out in the Midwest, you know, leisure hours, dirt burners, RC Clubhouse, I think for the most part, you're going to be safe with a ball diff car. Ball diff cars, in my opinion, tend to generate a little bit more grip and they're a little bit more consistent to drive. And I think that I think that what makes a lot of the gear diff driven cars manageable on the lower grip situations is the fact that you can thin out the center diff to spill off a little bit of extra power up towards those front wheels, you know, under hard acceleration. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that if you've ever tried putting a gear diff in your two-wheel drive buggy and driving it on low grip, that's just not the answer. But I think one of the downsides to the ball diff is that if you are somewhere that's on AstroTurf or carpet or super high grip like they did at the Worlds here at the 2013 IFMAR World Champions up in Chico, I think what happens is you end up having to snug the ball diff down so tight that the car doesn't really want to get through the corner the way it should, but you have to have it that tight because when you yank the throttle, you really want the car to get out of the corner aggressively. So, I don't know. You really can't... Some of the other manufacturers that have released cars after, say, the Hot Bodies car came out, you know, I think it's fair to say, hey, look, you guys messed up. You know, the bar had been set and you didn't really match it. But in this case with Losi, I feel like they developed their car kind of in parallel to some of the other, you know, obviously Hot Bodies and obviously X-Ray has gear diffs and stuff like that. I've heard that there was some prototyping going on, but if you build this car and you look how narrow the diffs are, I don't think we'll see gear diffs. So if you race on a wickedly high traction surface, this car just might not be the answer for you guys. But if you're like the rest of us and you race on a clay or a medium to medium high grip surface, I think you'll find that the car has more than enough adjustability in it to get it to do what you want it to do. So it would be cool if they could do a gear diff in a center diff and all that stuff. But I think fundamentally, the biggest thing that I would like to see changed about this car is make it so that we don't have to do any cutting or chopping to put the shorty in it. Let us tension this front belt. And one other thing, when you're working on this car, which can be a little bit cumbersome, there's no question about it. If you roach a spur gear, you've got a solid 20 to 30 minutes for changing a spur gear if you're pretty proficient. But it would be nice if these gear covers weren't really interlocking. That way they could be removed independently. I think that would save a bunch of time. So yeah, so that's about it. I mean, I guess that's pretty much my gripes about the car. Let me go ahead and let's wrap this up and we'll get on with the conclusion. Okay, so what's the conclusion? Here's basically what I think. If you're a TLR fan or you're looking for a four-wheel buggy, especially if you're here in the US and you're running on a low, medium, high grip, you know, track, is it worth spending let's just say call it $400 even on this buggy? Yes, it's a good kit. I think it's a good value. I don't think if you spend $400 on the TLR buggy, you're making a big mistake by any means. I think that they have a good platform. They seem to be developing new setups. I know Ryan Mayfield, now that he's joined TLR, has been like developing new setups. They clearly are making running changes to the car as they find things that they think can be improved. So in general, I think it's a good car. Is it perfect? I don't really think there is a perfect four-wheel buggy on the market. I've owned many of them. I've driven a ton of them. So I don't think there's a perfect four-wheel buggy, but do I think this is a good one? Yes, I do. So I guess for the bottom line, I think it's a good kit. I think it's a good value. And I think that if you're a TLR fan, you're not making a mistake if you buy one. Just that simple. Thanks for watching.
Good luck, drivers. You're going racing on the sound of the tone. Take it easy on the start. Oh, Rhoda getting cool. Either way, it's going to be Kevin Smith out front, and then somebody. Polly or JD, Polly in the number 2. Moore in the number 3. Casper in the number 4, and Barco Sr. in the number 5. Kazarian, no longer Snyder. Everybody bouncing all over the place here. Ronnie Thompson and Ben Smith out front. It's now Casper in the number 2 spot. I'm just kidding, I won't do anyway. I don't care if I like it or not. The only driver in the 13. Fisher through the rhythm section. There's Kevin Castor, Racing Mason. Snyder running in that fourth position, only 2 seconds back from Racing Mason. Mason with the fast lap now, 13.8 for Mason. Up into that number 2 spot. Oh, we're going to get it wrong and then on all fours. Going to do the right thing and check up. Oh no, Fisher nosing it over at the top of the hill. Here comes Snyder now. Snyder has a piece of the action. About top 4 right here through the rhythm section. Captain, Racing Mason, Fisher, and Jason Snyder through the rhythm. As leaders running 5th, Brian Smitty, Tyler Smitty, 6th and 7th. 5 minutes, 20 seconds, driver 5:20.
All right, we're down here at IERC and we're practicing with the Hot Bodies team for basically it's pre-Reedy race testing for the 2015 Reedy race. And I'm with European champ David Ronafalk. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do some battling here in 4-wheel. And do I get to go first? Yeah, sure. All right, let's do this. Beat it. Beat it. That's my black bag.
Oh! The jump pass.
Hey, that was a heck move. I got nothing for him. Hey, by the way, before you leave, I just want to say thanks again for watching my videos. I only make these videos so that we can have fun together. By the way, you'd be doing me a big favor if you could either comment, like, or even better, subscribe to my channel. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Okay, so now you can see what you get in the box when you buy the TLR 22-4. 22-4, meh.